Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for our agenda-setting meeting of January 19th, 2015. Tonight we'll be discussing items that will be voted on at our February 2nd meeting. We appreciate your participation and interest in the proceedings of your government. If you'd like an agenda, there to the for those that you are here, they're to the right of the door, just as you go out on a table. If you're watching us remotely, you can get an agenda through Athens-Clarke.com. And anyone here who has a cell phone or electronic device, would you please turn them off or to silent? We will have two meetings tonight, a special call meeting for consideration of the mayor's recommendation for acting manager, and also an executive session for consideration of real estate matters. The executive session will immediately follow our agenda-setting meeting tonight. And before we go into our meeting, there's someone I would like for you all to, I'd like to recognize, make sure everybody knows, Miss McCulloch. Allison McCulloch, would you mind standing up for us? Allison is our new liaison with the university, and I'm calling her the new Pat Allen. But Allison, we are really glad to have you and look forward to you participating in our meetings and keeping us informed of what's going on at the university. Thank you so much. Yeah. Ms. Bratton, would you call the roll?
Dickerson. Here. Sims.
Here.
Link.
Here.
Wright. Here. Bailey.
Present.
Neesmith.
Present.
Bale.
Here.
Harrod.
Present.
Gertz.
Here.
Hamby.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton.
Madam Mayor, may I move for suspension of rules?
I second that.
You may. Thank you. Thank you for the second. All in favor of suspension of the rules?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do I have a motion to go out of executive session?
Madam Mayor, I move for us to go into executive session after we complete the special call meeting.
Okay.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have one. Is there any citizen who would like to speak to the one item that we'll be voting on tonight on our at our special meeting, which is item number D, which is to receive a recommendation from the mayor for acting manager? Anyone like to speak to that? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Do I have a motion? Mr. Kurtz.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Blaine Williams as acting manager of Athens-Clarke County.
Second.
Have a motion second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Ordinance.
Oh, ordinance. Thank you, Ms. Spearman.
I asked the movement to change his motion slightly to say to approve the ordinance for appointment of the acting manager.
To approve the ordinance for appointment of the acting manager.
And seconds agrees. Okay.
And now I need to read it.
Thank you.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to appointment of acting manager and for other purposes.
Thank you, Ms. Spearman. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? You have another motion for us, Mr. Gertz? Sims.
I second that.
Have a motion second to adjourn our executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. This is the point in our meeting that any citizen who would, well, I need to tell you all the rules first. We allow 3 minutes for any citizen to speak to any item on our agenda. And there's a light on Ms. Spratlin's desk there that turns yellow at 2.5 minutes to remind you that your time's almost up and ask you to please have your thoughts finished by then so I don't need to interrupt you. Ms. Spratlin, would you call the roll?
Dickerson. Here. Sims.
Here.
Link.
Here.
Wright. Here. Bailey.
Present.
Neesmith.
Present.
Bale.
Here.
Harrod.
Present.
Gertz.
Here.
Here.
And this is the time that anyone who would like to speak to our recommended consent agenda, which are items 1 through 6, to come to the podium and tell us which item you're speaking to. Give us your name and address and take you 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Commission. I forgot last time. Tim Denson, 290 Midway Road. I just wanted to briefly speak to number 2, the application for the Go Transit grant funds. Very excited about this. This was something that myself and Athens for Everyone and many other groups fought very hard to have included in the transportation bill last year. Unfortunately, got lowered by $25 million. But hey, you take what you can get. I think this is a fantastic grant. I'm really happy about this to move towards the purchase of hybrid electric transit buses. I think many people in our community would be very happy with this. And basically, and also another good thing here is that it is guaranteed that only half this money can go to one department. I think MARTA is probably going to get a pretty sizable size here, but they cannot get more than $37.5 million. So the rest of that money is going to have to be spread out through the rest of the state here. And I would like to ask just that have this item be removed from the consent agenda so that we could have a more thorough discussion about it at the next meeting. I think a lot of people would like to come up to this podium and discuss why they think this is important. And it's going to be a very highly competitive grant. And I think the more buzz that we can get about this, the more people we can have advocating for it, the better chance we can have to get something like this. This is a great opportunity. Here in the state of Georgia, a state that gives zero operational dollars towards public transit, we need to take advantage of every opportunity that shows itself, and this is a good one. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Denson. Anyone else? Okay, we'll come behind the rail. Is there any commissioner who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Mr. Gertz.
Madam Mayor, number 4, just for a couple questions.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'd like to remove the transit item from the consent agenda, number 2.
Okay. And now is the time for anyone who would like to speak to anything on our new business, which is our items 7 through 11. And I need to tell you that one item has been removed. Number 9, which is the smoking ordinance revision, has been removed from the agenda, so we will not be receiving comment tonight. I hate if someone came out in the cold to do that, but just keep an eye on our website, and this may come back again, so you can speak to it. Do I have any citizen who wants to speak to items 7 through 11, with exception of 9? Okay, we'll come behind the rail, and we'll start with item number 2. And that, Ms. Link, did you?
Yeah, I mostly wanted to remove this to keep it off the consent agenda to provide citizens with a little bit more awareness of it and encourage input on it. I think it's really encouraging to see that we're applying for this grant. It's pretty big, and I hope everybody does a little grant dance to hope we get it. Our transit staff is often very challenged. They're challenged for funds. They're challenged. They're understaffed. So I hope that, by increasing awareness of their needs, we can think about that come budget time. There are definitely some needs for some more marketing efforts and more grant writing efforts, not just in our transit department, but throughout many departments in our government. So I have a feeling there'll be more people who might want to comment on this.
Thank you, Ms. Link. Mr. Gertz, you wanted before removed. Would you like to make some comments on that? And Jean, we'll leave number 2 on the regular agenda.
In the agenda report for item 4, which is continuation of our SPLOST 2005 waterline extension project, it's noted that the available budget won't cover the entirety of the lines that we still intend to build, but it will the vast majority of them. I just wanted to hear briefly kind of how the capital fund within public utilities will cover those future lines, and just a little bit about how those lines were prioritized, so those 9 or thereabouts that won't make this cut ended up in that basket.
You have noted correctly that the budget amount of money that we have doesn't cover all 62 of the projects. We estimate, given the unit prices that we have, that it will cover probably 52 of those projects. Those are prioritized according to what you see. I think it's in facts and issues number 2. Let me see, write this to be correct. Yeah, facts and issues number 2. It shows the prioritization. 2. Yeah, under the attachment 1, these projects were ranked in the following order. So that's how we eliminated the other 9. And we will continue to try to do those projects using other capital dollars within the Public Utilities Department. So they will ultimately get done. I think it's important to point out this group of projects is the lower of all the projects that we've done. Those priorities are in history number 3, if you'll note there. So the places in which there are public roadways without public water, and in which there's water quality issues or water liability problems, we solved all those. The public roadways with parcels that have structures on them, but they do not have frontage on a public water system. We've solved that problem. And all the public roads with a private community well water system, we've solved all those. We're down to basically the things that have to do with interconnects, trying to take care of the dead end so you improve your water quality and a little bit better in terms of fire response. But it is the lowest category of all the projects we started when we began this particular SPLOST project. And within that lower category is a priority you just asked about.
That's helpful. I appreciate it.
Ms.
I'm
Gertz,
happy
would
to
you
have
like
this
go
back
that
on
way?
consent.
Okay, we'll put that back on consent, Jane. Okay, we're now at item number 7. Would anyone like to speak to that? Ms.
Yeah.
Link? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I had a question I had asked Alan earlier today. On number 7, Whit Davis Elementary School does not have a radar. I have to find it real quick, sorry. Radar speed sign, and I was just wondering what the criteria was to determine whether or not they got one or not.
When we began looking at these, we looked at several things, but most importantly in that particular question is we consulted with the police department who does patrol in all those areas, all these schools. And what they were looking for was to find the places that had the highest volumes of traffic and the highest speeds of traffic in those areas. In the case of Whit Davis, which you asked about, it also has a traffic light there. So there's low volumes and there's already low speeds at those particular areas. Now, what we intend to do is to put in what's in the general report and continue to monitor. If there seems to be other problems, we can come back and add those later. But that's how those that do not have radar speed signs included were not included.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Link.
A month or two ago, I got a call from a citizen who lives off Westlake, which isn't my district, but he called me knowing that I'm always cheering on sidewalks. And he was really concerned that there's such a patchwork of sidewalks along Westlake. He said that they only live about a half mile from Clark Middle, yet his son can't safely walk to school. So I'm just wondering, like, where Westlake falls in the sidewalk list. Is there any indication of that possibly being considered for more safe routes to school money
No,
for
it's
sidewalks?
not meeting the criteria of safe routes to school, but we certainly can do review and let you know where it is in a priority in terms of sidewalks. I don't have that information here in front of me.
Yeah, if I could get that info, that might be helpful. Sure. And also I noticed when it talked about the safe routes to school monies that went to Barrow Elementary, it mentioned street lighting. And I was told when I inquired about street lighting to light up a sidewalk on Boulevard, there's a really, really dark patch where the sidewalk does a little jig right near a gully, and people have been known to walk off the sidewalk almost into the gully because there's no street lighting, no sidewalk lighting, there's no homes along that block between Hiawassee and Park Avenue. And I was told that there's no hope for a street light there because street lights are for auto safety only, not for pedestrian safety. Yet this safe routes to school item indicates that streetlights have been put in for pedestrian safety when it comes to safe routes to school. I'm just wondering what the process is and the policy is for that.
To correct one thing, that's not what it implies. The light that you're referring to was not put up under the Street Safe Routes to School program. It was done at the same time, but it was through our street light program, and it did illuminate an intersection area at the time. It was not put up for pedestrian purposes.
So the one mentioned in here has nothing. It is not with the safe routes to school monies.
Point that one out to me again. I thought
It's
you were referring to
mentioned when
Barrow.
it talks about the Barrow.
Yes,
yeah.
that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, so that was not safe routes to school money that put that street light in.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if I remember, that is correct.
And the needs for that street light had to do with auto traffic needs.
It met the policy for putting up street lights to primarily intersect or to illuminate intersections and other vehicle traffic areas.
Okay.
I'd also point out that the Barrow School, along with Chase and Gaines School, were funded through DOT monies, not local dollars exclusively.
Would anyone else like to speak to item 7? Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A previously approved project under the broader Safe Routes to Schools program, SPLOST category, involved some upgrades around the H.T. Edwards campus and also connecting to the West Broad campus, and emailed earlier today asking whether some consideration to traffic calming on Evans Street might be something that the program may encompass. And I'm not necessarily interested in a response right now because I know you probably have to look into that, but be interested in the future in hearing a little bit more about that.
The H.T. Edwards area, and I believe the other one was Strout we were working on, are in the revenue, the right-of-way acquisitions phase, and we expect to have those under contract this summer. The issue of traffic calming in Evans, it doesn't meet the current criteria. That is a item that was before the GOC that will be discussed this week, to ask the question, should those particular criteria be amended? And at that point, then it may qualify.
Does traffic calming generally fit within the umbrella of the Safe Routes program? I can't think of an exact case where that's been used for that.
It does not. That's not the intent of it. It's not traffic calming. Obviously, safety issues in and around schools, but it's not done for traffic calming purposes exclusively.
All right. I look forward to GOC's work.
That's right.
Yeah, I was happy to see this in several levels. I was a parent on the first Safe Routes to School with my kids were at Barrow Elementary, and then I had 8 years of dealing with the regulations, which are pretty tight from the school district side of it. So GDOT's criteria for Safe Routes to School things are very short circle around each of the schools, and it's really hard to get them to go beyond those. And I was happy to see that we are picking up some of the areas I think that weren't fitting in their criteria, but where it left off and filling in. So I appreciate that being done.
Anybody on this side have anything to say? Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to
Consent?
consent. Okay. Thank you, Harry. Item number 9 is our Legislative Review Committee's report on amendments to our tax cab and parking ordinances. Do you have an ordinance, Mr. Behrman, that we need to read tonight?
I won't read it tonight. I'll read it at the regular meeting.
Okay. Any discussion on this? And if Mr. Gertz, thank you.
Madam Mayor, we've talked about this quite a bit. I think this is going to enhance safety for people who are using taxi cabs all over town, particularly in our downtown region where they're heavily used. I think the cab stands will make for a more orderly process of entry and exit downtown. The major note that I'll make that's somewhat new is an updated map that uses more of a concentric zone process. So that thanks to those East Siders who pointed out our need for full and fair access east, west, north, or south from the downtown realm.
Anybody? Mr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As one of those East Siders that pointed that out, I'm very grateful to Commissioner Gertz for amending his map and showing us his cartographic skills. I do have a question, though. On the amendment on Section 614.4, which is page 42 of the PDF, I just really have a question more than anything. It says, it's talking about overall 24-hour service required. It says the taxi cab companies, shall maintain a central place of business that is accessible to the public between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, excluding holidays, and with at least one dispatcher available by telephone 24 hours a day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just kind of wondering why those hours and why nothing on the weekend.
The goal of this modification was really twofold. The first was in the era of communication that we're in, to be able to have that dispatcher somewhere other than a fixed location with a light and a storefront on. However, recognizing that there may be interactions in which there are lost items and those kind of things, that there would be some regular business hours, so you would have access to the proprietor at some point during the week.
Anyone else wish to speak to this? Ms. Lane?
I'm looking at the map, and I just kind of feel like the west end of Boulevard in Normaltown getting flung to the outer circle just seems a little unfair, considering that, you know, they are as the crow flies and even direct route wise, really close to downtown. So I'm wondering if maybe we could, amend the map to include, maybe all the way to Pound Street or Sylvia Circle and include Normaltown. Or I don't know, maybe Commissioner Gertz and I can sit down and talk about that. Is there a reasoning?
What I would note is that really that central lightest colored component of the map is downtown in the very immediate realm. And then the slightly deeper, kind of the mid-blue, is a layer beyond that. So outside of the central business district and immediate surroundings. And then, you, of course, have to move out beyond the loop on Prince Avenue to get to the more expensive tier.
What is that mid-tier? Let's see.
So
Okay.
I believe is that a $7 base? I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't have that page in front of me.
I don't know, it just seems like going all the way out to South Millage is a much longer ride than going, say, to King Avenue. I don't know, maybe we can talk about it some more.
Anyone else wish to speak to this ordinance? I believe this probably needs to stay on discussion. We'll now move to item number 10, which is the Hancock Community Development Corporation lease agreement. Any questions on that from anybody? Okay, move. Did you say leave it on discussion? Yes, we'll leave it on discussion. Okay, we get to our final item, and are we still title only, Mr.? Yeah. So it's item number 11, which is fire services and safety equipment for fire station number 2. Anybody, commissioners, have any comments on that tonight? Well, now we will move on to our planning commission recommendations, and we will receive staff reports tonight. We don't receive public input on these items at our agenda setting meetings, but we do have a public hearing on these items at our voting meeting, which will be February 2nd. So. Waiting for it to load up.
Computer. Yeah. Is it not plugged in? I've never seen it say that. Well, we may do these without overhead slides. None of them very complicated this evening, but while he's working on that, let me just go ahead and start. We've got 3 this evening. The first one is a special use in the RS-25 zone out at 4680 Lexington Road. This is a Cornerstone Church that was brought to you in 2012 with the original special use, and they have already outgrown some of their space. They need more parking for the multiple services that they have going on at the same time. They're also asking to build a gymnasium of just over 10,000 square feet and to add a 3,200 square foot open air pavilion, like a picnic pavilion, along with 202 additional parking spaces, which will give them a total of just over 520, which is what they need based on the services as mentioned before. Parking is going just to the south and southwest of the existing structure. You've got those site plans, the gymnasium as well as the picnic pavilion, both located behind the church structure itself to the rear. No conserved canopy, there we go. No conserved canopy to be removed. You can see here in this is taken from kind of the back driveway that comes off of the shared driveway that we also utilize for our tennis center. That grassy area just to the front there will be where the expanded parking is going. You can see it's coming down that side where we were just looking, and then across the back for a total of about 200 more. And then you see the gym and the picnic pavilion. Recommendation from the planning, because this is a special use, as with all of our special uses, it was a binding site plan, so the changes require an amendment before you. The Planning Commission is recommending that it be approved with conditions, and I believe both of those conditions have been corrected and modified by the applicant, so the ordinance you see with this at your February meeting will not have any conditions listed, and it was a unanimous vote to approve.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns, anybody? Okay, move on to item number 13 then.
Item number 13, 855 Macon Highway. This is another amendment to a special use in an RM1 zone. Largely a piece of property that is unbuildable due to environmental areas. It was previously approved for a canoe and kayak facility takeout spot for big dogs on the river. All that is really being asked with this application this evening, when they started using it, they realized there was a better place on the property to take the canoes and the kayaks out than where they had shown on the originally approved binding plan. And so they're simply asking to move that takeout location to another area of the property, and then make some minor amendments to the driveway as well. There is a variance also along with this one to allow the driveway not to be installed due to topographic reasons and road conditions. You can see, I think the next slide is a little better in terms of the topography that they're looking at in terms of trying to get a sidewalk on that facility. But as you can see here, the driveway on the left is the driveway that was originally approved. The circle area that has the bolded dark line on it, that area is to be completely removed. And then you see the new driveway and loop pickup area to the right. And that's really that is the purpose of this special use amendment. With regard to Planning Commission recommendations, they are recommending approval of the variance to remove the sidewalk. And they are also recommending approval with conditions that you see listed there, all of which will be shown as conditions to the ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't really have a question except to say that, certainly I anticipate the support for this. I think we've supported this project before, and especially supported Big Dog and Terry Stevens. Of course, he's always been a good neighbor wherever his business is, and with this particular business, he does provide a good service, not only for recreation along our rivers, but certainly some educational opportunities along our rivers as well. So I'll be pleased to support this, and maybe we can just go ahead and put it on consent agenda if y'all would like. Okay, then. We'll wait.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't particularly have any problems, but I did have a question, Brad. So you said that they are moving the takeout spot, because when I've kayaked down the river on a couple of occasions, the takeout spot is right under the bridge. So are they moving it from there?
They began using it there, even though it wasn't really permitted, and they were actually using and improved an existing public utilities easement with some additional gravel to get to that point. So this started off as a code enforcement issue that led to the amendment of the special use permit.
Okay, so where will the takeout spot be?
This is downriver from his store. So this is called the drought route. It's downstream and it's navigable when the upstream part from Vaughn Road to his store is not navigable because of the shoals. So this is an extension of his route that he uses on those times he can't use the southern route. Okay. And while, if you don't mind, I also support this. Mr. Stevens also organizes river cleanups, and he's done many, moved hundreds and hundreds of tires He's a good citizen, and this is going to improve the quality of this particular route, because this was a difficult place to pull, as one who's done it a few times, to pull your kayak and drag it up the hill. And that's one of the reasons that this gravel was put in that shouldn't have been put there. That was actually some overambitious employee or contractor that did that. That was not something Mr. Stevens asked to be done, but he will correct it with no problem. So I also support this very strongly.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. Are y'all okay for this big consent agenda?
Can't go off consent.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I just got through telling you we couldn't do it. Wake up, Nancy. Okay, item number 14.
Okay. Also a special use request in RM2 Airport Overlay District. Two properties, 322 and 328 Carr Street. Special use request is to add an additional dwelling to each of the two lots, thereby making it a multifamily use of the property based on the multiple dwellings, which is what's triggering the spatial use through the airport. Each of the two lots currently has a 3-bedroom house to be retained and a 5-bedroom house proposed to be built at the rear of each of the lot, with the parking for the associated dwellings behind the two houses that front Carr Street. They are requesting a sidewalk variance as part of this, and with all special use, if approved, the site plan, architectural elevations, and application become binding. You see the two properties here in the airport overlay zone. An aerial. And I've got a couple pictures of the existing. Those two houses to either side of the little red symbol there are the two in question. The house just immediately to the right of these two currently has a structure in the rear yard of it on a separate lot too that was not in place at the time that this was built. It was one of the last of the special use permits that you all were asked to act on for the creation of a lot before the ordinance was amended. Mm-hmm.
Which house has the extra?
This one.
Okay, because I don't see something separate.
It's not back there now.
Oh, okay.
This was
okay.
done before
okay.
that house was built.
Okay.
You can see it in this one, though. That's the house that's in the back of the one to the right. And these are the two houses. Yeah, from a special use standpoint, a couple things. This is a special use under the Airport Overlay District, so it has a different set of review criteria than what we normally see with special use permits. They're listed on the third page of the staff report for you. They're in the ordinance. The ordinance specifically replaces the standard 3 questions that we normally look at in terms of compatibility with all ordinances and architectural and scale and all of those things that we generally will look at with a special use really don't apply in this situation. What the criteria for this type of a special use is really impact on airport operations, of which this has been reviewed by the airport authority and with a recommendation with some conditions to be approved. That being said, the other portion of this that I pointed out to the Planning Commission, that if this is approved, what this does do is it really kind of locks in those two cottages on the front to remain under binding site plans, which he certainly has the ability at this point to remove those structures. If he chooses to build the two in the back, kind of locks in these two in the front too. So just another aspect of a special use permit to keep in mind. Another picture down in the bottom left, this is the area where the sidewalk would be installed. There is some grade, but we certainly don't feel like it is beyond the ability to install a sidewalk in conjunction with this, nor did the Planning Commission. Site plan here, again, that's the house that you saw in the photograph to the rear on its own lot. These are the two lots in question, the two existing homes up on the street and the two new ones to be built in the back. The parking all in the back of the two front ones, and then there was some language in the report, some conditions about the need to remove some parking. Each one of these two properties is allowed to have a maximum of 6 spaces that are not structured. They both have them in the form of, excuse me, you see right there, each of those two lots has an additional parking space up in the front. The one on the left, get this to come back. There we go. Right here. And we're not in a position where we're recommending or asking it to be a condition that that driveway cut be removed. But if he chooses to leave that, we're going to count that as a parking space, and he's going to need to lose one of the 6 in the back. The one in the second lot over, we feel like this space needs to go away as a condition. It's an elevation of what the two structures will look like. And the recommendations from the Airport Authority were to approve with conditions passed on by the Planning Commission, with also a recommendation to deny the variance, which leads to the first condition that the sidewalk must be installed. And then there were a number of other conditions, and we've noted in our report, a few of those conditions were addressed as part of the submittal to this group. There are still 3 or 4 of those conditions that will remain as part of the ordinance, and it's really a timing and logistics issue. It wasn't so much something he could address now, but there are things that will be required of him, if approved, as we move through the development process. So with that, the recommendation from the Planning Commission was to deny the variance and to approve the special use with conditions.
Any questions? That's right.
This is in my district, so I wanted to speak to it and just express that I do have concerns about it. I agree with denying the variance. I need to do some more homework, which I plan to do between now and the voting meeting, so I can get a better understanding of it and let you guys know more about what I think about it. Thanks.
Brad, what was the justification for not including the sidewalk?
On his behalf, the topo. That grade. That, and then, a lot of the same argument that we hear, and I understand the concern that there's currently not any sidewalk on Carr Street right now, and so to simply install it on 2 lots appeared to not be in the best interest. We certainly were not able to support the requested variance, nor was the Planning Commission.
One other question, what is the future right-of-way to be dedicated? I should know this, but I don't.
It would take it out to a full 50 feet. Which,
easement?
Will that make the sidewalk have to set back further from?
sidewalks are generally in the right-of-way as part of it. It's showing a 30-foot, a varying right-of-way with 30 feet of pavement. You're probably looking at 5 feet of additional right-of-way to be added on his side only at the time of development.
So conceivably, the sidewalk could be below that grade?
Possibly, but I don't know that it's going, I don't know that it will go that far back with the addition.
Thank you.
I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and there was some interesting discussion of it. I mean, there seemed to be, from some of the commissioners, some distaste for this kind of development, this kind of large duplex development, and the impact it has on the character of the neighborhood. But then again, this is what our zoning allows for. I have a question for Brad really quick. There is talk of an infill housing ordinance working its way through the system. Would that infill ordinance apply to this RM-zoned, an RM-zoned neighborhood like this? Or the Hancock district, for example, or some of our East Athens neighborhoods?
It certainly could. I mean, I don't think it will be, and as that ordinance continues to evolve and go through the community vetting process as well, it's going to change. But it generally, on an infill ordinance, you're dealing more with, single 1- and 2-family uses, where this kicks into full-blown multifamily plan review, which is what's driving this. But in terms of if there were issues with regard to setback scale, things like that, it certainly could.
Mm-hmm. What are the heights of those new duplexes compared to the existing historic homes?
Let's see, here's the next picture. Significantly taller. I mean, they set well back off the road, but you can see, from the picture in the top right here that you're dealing with a single-story house really with both of them, to it's not a full 3, but it's a full 2 with a 3rd floor in the gable.
And as far as the airport overlay, is that height a consideration at all when it, if there are planes flying overhead? That wasn't a concern for the airport?
I mean, at this distance off the end of the runway, no. I think that variation in height, really not. The other thing, you can see a little bit from both of these pictures too, that, the grade appears to fall in the backyard. And so where that house you see in the upper right kind of sits up, it looks like you're probably going to lose, 5 to 8 feet of height on it just based on topography in the back as viewed from the street. But, a 2.5-story structure that far off the end of the approach it's not going to be a height issue concern with the airport.
Well, one thing about this is it would guarantee the preservation of those 2 historic homes. So there's that. I mean, this neighborhood has changed a lot, and is definitely the historic character of it is definitely in peril. So that's one positive.
Just as a kind of small detail related to some work that I've been interested in and that LRC has on their docket, I'm absolutely supportive of the sidewalk. Not only do we have lots of pedestrian use through the neighborhood, but this would introduce 10 new bodies onto this parcel.
From the sketch, it looked like the 2 new unit or 2 new buildings would be very similar to the one we're seeing there. Is that?
That's our understanding, yes.
And so on each lot, they're going to be how many?
Well, I don't know how many people. I can tell you that each lot has an allowable density of up to 8 bedrooms. And so there are 3 bedrooms in each of the 2 older structures and 5 proposed for the 2 in the back.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Well, I believe this concludes our meeting tonight. Drive safe, everybody, and stay warm. Oh, I'm sorry. We now, I'm in a hurry to go home, aren't I? It's a good thing we got a good mayor pro tem. Yeah, we will be going into executive session now, so if I wish to secure the room for us, appreciate it.